Welcome back to the Creating Value in Schools podcast with me, Liz Worthen, where we talk about ways to work more sustainably in schools. And today we're thinking about sustainability in terms of maybe making best use of resources through innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurial thinking. So it's fantastic to have with me Sufian Sadiq from Chiltern Learning Trust. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Liz.
You. Now, Sufian, your current role comes with an exciting job title, Chief Talent and Transformation Officer. But I know one of the places you started out was as a business studies teacher, and that actually has a bearing on the approach and attitude you bring to your current work. So tell us something about that.
I would probably actually even go a bit further back. In my office, and I'm not in my office, which is a shame. If I was sat in my office right now, you'd see a picture at the back. And the picture is of me in one of our schools when I was a year 10, year 11 pupil. And that whole full cycle has been so interesting. But the trophy I was holding in that picture was a young entrepreneur trophy as a part of the Young Enterprise Scheme that many people will be familiar with. And it was my first real moment where I felt like I found the skill and niche that I felt I had, which probably was somewhere along the lines of being an entrepreneur and being a salesman to some extent. And that kind of obviously developed further in my career in studying business studies, a degree in business. And then it went on to teaching business studies at a sixth form college for nearly 12 years and really enjoying that whole journey as a business studies teacher. But what it does do for you as both as a teacher is that if you always were an entrepreneur, you're constantly surrounded by entrepreneurial stories. You're looking at case study after case study of people who have taken risks. And my real interesting part in my journey in the trust is 8 years ago, I think I bought the teacher element with me into my new role. And then I brought the entrepreneur element with me in that role. And combining the both in, as I often refer to, in the business of education has been an immensely exciting journey.
Brilliant. Tell us a bit then about your role and how you're bringing those two things together, the teacher, the entrepreneur, and what kind of projects you're involved with at Chiltern.
So the first one is one of the things, it was about looking at things that are costing our schools a lot of money and where that money is just not worth us spending. And there's more creative ways of doing it. So recruitment is one. We have a very proud stat of nearly probably now 350 teachers we've recruited without paying for a single advert. Now, that's a huge saving for schools that were just used to writing this annual budgets with 10,000, 20,000 set aside for marketing, advertisement, for teaching posts. To be able to say actually 350 teachers have come with us thinking about marketing in a more creative way. Almost what they term as guerrilla marketing. That actually, at the moment, anyone can market anything with the power of social media without necessarily the need of traditional broadsheets, traditional methods that people would have used for marketing. So that for us, that recruitment and retention is a key part of my role. So that talent element is about making sure we get the very best people. Yesterday, I presented to our heads for our trust. We're 21 schools within Chiltern Learning Trust. And we had, for the last 2 months, we've had over 1,000 applications for people wanting to work with us in 2 months. Over 1,000 applications in 2 months. Now that, for me, is creating value, is going into this role where my role and my approach has been, how can I make sure and sustain a talent pipeline that brings the very best talent into Chiltern Learning Trust in front of our head teachers so they can recruit the very best? Because the best way to improve schools is to improve teachers or bring the very best teachers and put them in front of children. And we know that that works for us. So that probably our standout area where the innovation and creativity in how we recruit, coupled with the fact that our entrepreneurial approach has meant we've said when we said no adverts, that meant we had to work really hard to drive up interest. And we're in a position now, 1,000 people applied without a single advert going out.
That's incredible, isn't it? And as you say, a real cost saving. Though I wonder if as well, I suppose perhaps that is that partly a choice rather, so we're not spending on the adverts, but maybe we do have marketing expertise, or we've got people that are doing that social media work, or drawing that pool. And do you kind of keep a rolling roster where people can send in a CV and you'll keep them on file and that kind of approach? Yeah, tell us a bit more about the actual practicalities of how you do
Yeah.
that.
And that's a really good question, is because what we're not doing is necessarily having no advertisement and replacing it directly with personnel that may cost as much, if not more, in some cases, to just do the marketing. Of course, like most organizations, we do have a marketing function, but the best marketing in our sector comes from the people that are leaders, that are teachers in the sector. There's only so much your marketing team can produce in marketing collateral and content for you that feels natural to educators, because you can tell something that's made by teachers and something that's not made by teachers. And I think teachers see through that. But also, marketing isn't polished anymore. This idea of having, we've got our glossy booklets here in front of
Yeah.
us. That used to be a thing years ago, like having loads of glossy marketing material and amazing prospectuses for each school, amazing websites. That's not how it works. Marketing works now because of social media, and it's recognizing what kind of content is useful for social media. And social media content for us increasingly is a way that we expend a lot of our energy, is trying to make sure that we're constantly putting out information. We're talking and explaining the whole time what it's like to work in Chiltern Learning Trust. And if you look through our socials, it's lots of celebrations, it's lots of happiness, it's lots of fun, it's us doing wild, wacky, crazy things. It sums us up as a personality. But it's also what we refer to as the opening of the envelope. We turn up to the opening of an envelope. When we're invited to events in our community, nationally, locally, we make sure we're there. We make sure we're present, because that counts. That marketing, that flow drip effect of turning up to loads of places and meeting loads of people matters. And then the last part is that talent pool development, is to try and say that at any given time, we constantly have a bank of people that we've met and we keep in touch with. So I meet hundreds of teachers, leaders every year. I keep in touch with them systematically, check how they're doing. And this is the biggest crunch week. I feel like I'm like the football manager at the moment, like Harry Redknapp on transfer deadline day. And this week, the transfer deadline is coming up to it. But this morning, we've made 4
Wow.
appointments where I made calls to people and said, right, yeah, I know we had a cup of coffee a few months back. We'd really like you to come. And I literally convinced somebody to turn up and have a coffee with one of our heads at lunchtime at 12 o'clock. Now, that person will be headed to that school for a coffee. And that wouldn't have happened without that relationship, without meeting people over a period of time, investing in people. So we invest in people, we invest in relationships, and that can only be done with time, but it also can be done with the right people. It's not easy enough for me to pass that down to an administrative function in my team for someone to meet people. People want to meet myself. They want to meet the CEO, the deputy CEO. They don't want to then say, all I'm doing is meeting an HR admin person who is just collating my details. So it's a lot of time investment, but it pays off.
Enjoying the podcast? Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Coming up, more from Sufian on designing a localised recruitment and retention strategy, what we can learn from Harrods about customer care, and the importance of teas, coffees and toilets at open evenings and events. Now back to the show. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? So it feels almost, yes, that's where the investment is, isn't it? It's rather than in money for an advert, as you say, you taking the time to build relationships. And that's the theme that's just keeps coming up on so many of the discussions I'm having. I think also, and you're going to the places where people are, aren't you? Because am I right? Like you use TikTok for some of your, ITC recruitment, which maybe I don't know how many schools are doing that.
So it is for us is recognizing market as a whole. So the market is the place where buyers and sellers meet. I'm going into business studies teacher mode, but then is recognizing within a market, you have a demographic and a breakdown. This idea that any one of our schools is for any person who wants to work there, it doesn't really work like that because all of the data that we see through our application tracking system on My New Term shows where our people come from. And most of our people live quite close to our schools. They're in the communities our schools serve. So therefore, us putting a job advert out 50, 70, 100 miles away, nobody's packing their bags up from Newcastle to come down and live in Luton. It's not happening. It'd be nice, but it's not happening. It's not the kind of place people relocate to. It's not Cornwall or somewhere where people are saying, right, actually, I'm going to plan to finish my last 10 years of my career out on the coast. It doesn't have that factor. So, what is it that we can do to kind of attract the right people? Facebook, as much as we want to now say it, but even our primary school parents are no longer becoming the Facebook generation, is becoming an
Wow.
Instagram generation. I
Yeah.
dare I say it, Liz, Facebook's an old people's
Oh, really?
platform. It's an old people's platform. It's recognizing who our target market is. And if we're trying to get 21-year-olds, if that we want them to train to teach, and we have a really successful teaching school, the interesting thing is they're on Snapchat, they're on TikTok. It's about producing content that can get out to them and they press apply. It's recognizing that when we're advertising to 23 to 27-year-olds, 30-year-olds, they're all still Instagram generation. And that's where they will get most of their content. And it's then leveraging ex pupils. We've got ex pupils with 2 million people following them on TikTok. Now, if you've got that happening in your locality and you're developing constant content, which some people might look at our content and say, don't they have a job to do? They're jumping on all these online trends. But actually, the way the algorithms work, the way search engine optimization works, it's about making sure that you're producing sufficient content to allow the algorithms to help you pop up constantly. And you've had it probably on your phone. You're looking at something and you're thinking, right, it's my partner's birthday coming up. And coincidentally, there's a deal on the shirt for the football team my partner supports. We know algorithms work that way on social media, but they also work that way in the way we put content in and the way it attracts people to look at our content. We used to have, and I'll give you an example. We worked with a local ex pupil, which was a social influencer on Snapchat, and he sings and he's a bit of a singer. He's got quite a big following. And we put on a train to teach event, which we might do in a school in an evening for a locality in that school. And we'd have 5 to 7 people rock up, find out about train to teach. And we advertise on parent mail for that school to say, look, if anyone in your community is interested, come over this evening. We'll have a stall up. We had 74 people turn up to an event because he put it on. He's 20 years old. He's not a teacher. But because he put it on his Snapchat, that came up. We worked with a local person. She runs a makeup studio. She does bridal makeup. And she said, look, actually, I really want to thank local teachers. And we were like, right, we've got an idea. Why don't you do this little session with someone from our team that can get their makeup done? But during that clip, they're talking about a career in teaching. Tens of thousands of people viewed it. Hundreds of people contacted us to want to work for us. It's a different world, and that's the world we live in. And it definitely works for us from a marketing perspective.
And that also means, doesn't it, as you say, you're then growing a staff base of people from your community, representative of your community, and then also, I guess, to people who will want to stay.
It addresses a diversity issue. Now, the reason it addresses that is if you are in a community diverse like Luton, and people in Luton now feel like they can work for you, the things that you benefit from is the moral mission means something to them because they live in Luton and they want what's best for Luton children. And that's not to say people from outside don't, but it's a slightly different passion when someone's giving back to their own community. It's something that those children can recognize. They can feel it's palpable. They're in the classroom that this person totally gets what life in Luton is like. They know what it's like. So it creates that passion within the teachers. They tend not to move, so retention is really high in Chiltern Learning Trust, and it's excellent when people come and work for us and then stay. They don't want to leave because it's so local. The fact is, the average person is commuting in our Luton high schools, 3 to 5 miles is their commute. Now, they don't want to now suddenly take up a 45-minute journey to school in the morning when they can get to school during the day. They like the fact our people tell us that when school X used to be outside of the trust, they were scared to wear their lanyard in Sainsbury's or Aldi's after school because it felt embarrassing being associated with that school because of the poor standards and performance. But because Chiltern Learning Trust, and you'll see these blue jackets where like
Oh,
the
wow.
Smurfs,
Yeah.
people love to
Oh,
wear a Chiltern jacket out in the community
yeah.
because they say people look at us and say, "Oh, these guys work for Chiltern, you work for Chiltern," and that's a sense of belonging and community we've created with our staff by recruiting locally, and it's helped us on retention. It's helped us on recruitment.
That's amazing. Jackets. That's
Mhm.
that's a new thing too. Wow. And I think something else is important to you. I've heard you speak about being very customer focused. That everyone who comes through your doors for a training or for teacher recruitment, for teacher training, you see them as a customer, don't you? And as someone to be valued.
So I'm massive on this with my team. This idea in public sector, we're perhaps a bit guilty of the fact that we take for granted things as simple as ITT. The average secondary ITT person is spending 9 to 10,000 with us. And my point to my team was, let's go out to Harrods. Let's go to Harrods and see how they treat someone that could potentially spend £1,000 to £2,000, let alone £10,000. Let's look at that treatment. We've got 30, 40, 50 trainees spending 10,000 each. Are they feeling like a £10,000 customer when they're coming in? And it's getting the small things right. And for me, it's about customer journey. It's about the touch points. It's about whenever people interact with us. It's if you phone our landline and you want to find out about a career in teaching, but actually they've got the wrong number. They were looking for Chicken George up the street. Don't let them come off the phone. Say, let me get you Chicken George's number. Well, it's not Chicken George, it's actually Chiltern Learning Trust that you've come through to, but let us get you Chicken George's number because every interaction must be a positive interaction. I talk about the fact that our receptionist, I don't want them to feel like the same experience I get at my doctor's receptionist, where I just feel scared to be ill because if I call my doctor, I'm like, oh no, many people they're going to shout at me. They'll be away, and I've missed 8:30 by 1 minute, and now I'm 97th in the queue. I don't want that experience. Anyone who calls Chiltern, it's then saying, then what is the experience? What does that experience look like? And then how do you define and look at it in a granular way? We look at teaching in a school in a codified and granular way. We say the experience of the child in the classroom is that they line up outside. You meet them at threshold. They come inside. There's a do now task. And we codify, we know that procedural element makes sure that it creates consistency across the organization and the experience of the customer, i.e., the pupil, is the same, which leads to great outcomes. How do I do the same with people that are interacting without CPD? So if people say that they like Yorkshire tea, I don't care how hard it is to get those Yorkshire tea packets, which are actually really hard to get because you can find Tetley and PG Tips. But if they want Yorkshire tea, we get them Yorkshire tea. And if they're telling us at the end of a school day, teachers are telling us, I'd rather have a Borders biscuit than another company, then right, let's get them Borders biscuits. Because if that is the thing that makes a difference, if meaning that when they come to us for training, parking matters, let's make sure that the parking is in. When people say to us, right, when we came to a school reception for training, reception weren't very positive with us. Right, let's train reception around how to greet teachers that are coming for a CPD event. Then let's look at what is it like in the room. What's the audio like? What's the visual like? Is there carpet in the room? Is it warm enough? Are the snacks in the right places? Are there enough breaks? What's the experience through the training? If someone's a really, really boring trainer, well, I don't want you because you're boring, because I know the people are going to get bored. I want to create an experience for people that they'll enjoy. I always say this to everyone that comes through on a 1-day course. We spend big and make sure our lunches are brilliant, because actually most people who come and go on courses in education always talk about the networking and the lunch. Very few people talk about the actual outcomes of the day and what they learn. So actually, if people love networking, let's create opportunities for network. And if they love a good lunch, let's get the best lunch. And it's trying to manage that experience so that every time people interact with children, they have a great experience. Now, as a teaching school, we are a self-financing business. And therefore, if we're in the business of selling courses, programs, CPD, specialist leaders in education and advisors and consultants going out, every interaction with us has to be an interaction that feels like a positive interaction. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be carefully curated, and it needs to make sure it meets the needs of our customers to exactly the level that we need it to be at.
Wow, that's really interesting. Some people might say, but this is education, this is schools. Should we be treating it like a business? Or some people might say, that's fine for you to say, but our budgets, we're a small school, our budgets are straightened. These ideas are a challenge for us.
It's a fair question, but a smile isn't a challenge. A smile isn't a challenge. We know NHS is really pushed financially, but I'm desperate. If the receptionist at that doctor's surgery smile at me and say hello to me very nicely, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
If they just said, look, I know you've missed the appointment slot now because every time you call in, Sufian, you miss it, and now you've called in for 7 days in a row and there's no luck for you. Let me see if I can try and help you. And that is the experience that we create. And what great customer service looks like is often the cheapest possible way of doing it is relationships. We go back. I always say it's so interesting going to a great restaurant, because I love going to some great Indian restaurants in London. I kind of got this list of top 100 that I want to tick off. And I'll go to Mayfair. I'll judge the restaurant by the toilets. And I think to myself, how deluded is that? How weird is it, the fact that I judge a restaurant by its toilets? Because toilets are an experience sometimes that you have when you go to a restaurant. If there's a really nice toilets and they're very clean, you get this experience around the place that somehow makes you feel really positive. If the waiters in the restaurant are just really, really kind and forthcoming, you go back there, even if the food is slightly less in standard than the restaurant down the road, because that person always smiles at you, always asks how you are, remembers you from the last time you came and says, oh my God, Liz, how are you? You said it was going to be your birthday. How was your birthday? And you're like, oh yeah, it was great. And you're thinking, I love going there. You love going there because of the human interaction and the positive interaction you have with people. And one of the things that we can be better at in education is creating those better human interactions, so that when we're doing things as schools, we know that every school, I've got this thing, the amount of money schools are spending with external business organizations for quick fix problems, there is no silver bullet in education. You can buy this package for great teaching of this organization, this organization. There's edu celebrities out there in the market, and they're doing great marketing and selling things to you, and you're buying them, and you're buying subscription after subscription, despite your tight budgets. But you can be entrepreneurial as a school. You can say, right, we do this really well. Let's put a course on for local schools, but let's think about making that course such a great experience so that we can put this course on 3 or 4 times a year, and it makes a few £1,000s for us because we're brilliant at this and we're sharing that practice, but it brings something back into our budget. It's trying to make sure that we get the best bang for our buck for the money that we get from the public purse. We stretch that as far as we can, and we get the most value back for our children, our pupils, and our communities.
And it sounds like too, so that kind of customer thinking and experience focus, that extends for everyone, pupils, staff, parents.
Absolutely, and I think it's great customer service when you're trying to get people in, but even thinking about falling pupil role, I think about things like open evenings. Let's curate that experience for open evening. We want those parents to feel amazing. So let's think about open evening. Open evening starting at 5 o'clock. We all know that every one of us is rushing around trying to get home to pick the kids up, then get them in the car, then get to the school to go and see the school with them. We're rushing around. People haven't had dinner. People haven't eaten. But what does that look like? Well, maybe actually having really nice tea and coffee available is great. I don't know. Maybe I'm a real stickler. Maybe I'm a bit odd as a person. If there's a plastic spoon in a pot of sugar or a bag of sugar with lumps of sugar now formulated, my experience isn't as good as if I picked out the little cube and chucked it in
Yeah.
to my thing. If I had a decent setup there, if I had a proper cup to drink out of instead of a flimsy plastic cup. Now, I get the fact that the school thought, let's set up this little urn and put this little dirty cloth out at the moment. Yeah, and we couldn't have washed it from last time. It's totally creased up. Let's just put this out, chuck the urn on, and you know what? I did want a cup of coffee. Or do I recognize the fact that parents are coming to this school for an experience? And yes, it's about the education, but what you can't get away from, it goes back to my toilets in the restaurant experience. Yes, they came for the food, but they judged you on the toilets. What do the toilets in your school smell like? Because that person's just come from work. What does the greeting look like at the school? So actually saying, welcome, how are you? Are the children greeting them? Are adults greeting them? What are adults saying? How positive are the adults? Or are they already drained? And you can tell our staff look absolutely knackered to be there on this wet November evening trying to convince these parents to come to our schools. When they go into classes, have we just said, oh, can you put something on? Science, put something on. English, put something on. I want them to go around and see pupils work. Is that all you want to see as parents? Actually, what I want as a parent is I want someone really talking to my children. I want them, because I find it awkward. You're walking around like this little lemming in a classroom. You don't know what to do. I want someone to say, come in, please. What I want to tell you about this. Would that be better from a child? Maybe. Would it be great for them to see a little video? Maybe. Whatever the experience is, curate it and think about it. And you can't say I've got a real challenge of high competition for student places in my area, but the day I have my shop window, it's not looking like John Lewis's Christmas shop window. Why not? That's your Christmas. That open evening is your Christmas opportunity to be John Lewis, is to put out the very best shop window that you possibly can so that when they see that shop window, they want to come in and buy. How do you do that? Now, some people might argue that, you know what, actually, that's overdoing it. But what I would say is in an environment where every aspect of our lives is marketed to us, everywhere we go, shopping, we're marketed all the way up to the till. There's still small things you can end up buying right at the till. It's the milk is in the furthest corner from when you enter the market. Why is it there? Alcohol is right at the very back in furthest corner from the door. Why? Because people come in for cheaper alcohol in supermarkets. They'll have to walk past everything. And as you're walking past things, the temptation for you to buy. It's all about creating an experience. And we go through these experiences thousands of times a day in reality. But why is it that we're so averse to the idea of saying a school has to be an experience? And that will mean pupil numbers go up. That means staff stay because we curate an experience for them as well. We look at the surveys and take it seriously. We try and get the small things right for them to stay. And if we started looking at that, and I'm not talking about, some people will say, oh, yeah, but this is all about commercializing, privatizing education that way. It's trying to say, if we create the same experiences that they get elsewhere in our schools, they'll want to be in our schools. They want to work in our schools. They want to send their kids to our schools. And sometimes people would have sent their kids to a school, irrespective of an Ofsted report or the results, because of how great the speech was from the head. And if the head isn't the best person at speaking, the head welcomes and gets the best speaker up because you're creating an experience. You then have the very best absolute 15-minute presentation. You're not killing them with boredom. You're getting them out in classes and you've created it. And if people buy it and send their kid because of that, great news. You're competing in a very competitive market. That can only be good for your school.
It sounds to me like what I'm hearing from you is actually entrepreneurial thinking. It's something that's accessible to anyone. And what it partly seems to be about is actually putting yourself into the person's shoes, your customer's shoes, thinking about the experience they're going to have, building relationships, finding ways to make them feel special and appreciated and valued. It's not something that needs big budgets or particular
It doesn't.
talents or skills.
It doesn't. It's exactly like us going to our favorite aunt's house because of the experience she creates for us. Because when we go to her house, she loves seeing us. And because she's so happy to see us and she's made a great meal, it's always such a great experience. You like going there. And it's just that human nature aspect. We love it when we know and can tell people have thought about us and they've thought about the smaller things. They've made our experience easier. It's not a school toilet at the end of a 5 o'clock day smelling absolutely rotten. Yeah, and he's not in a good shape. How much would it have cost to put a bit of a diffuser out there? How much could it have cost you to have something there where if people are coming in and they're wet, they can put the umbrellas somewhere, they can put coats up on a peg somewhere to dry off, they can have a hot drink. These things don't cost a huge amount, but they require us to think about the customer journey. And businesses do that for us. Sainsbury's and Tesco's and Aldi's will all have a very thorough plan around what the experience is, but they will also know the demographic of who they're targeting. They'll know, right, Liz likes to come in on a Thursday to pick up her shopping. What does Liz expect from her shopping in M&S on a Thursday evening? She wants to come in quickly, grab something, and go. Like, how do we make the best possible experience for Liz? Now, it's just recognizing everywhere in life happens. If we start doing that in education, we start competing on a different level.
Oh, thank you. You've given lots to think about and take away and practical ideas there. So just to finish, Sufian, is there any suggestions for someone who wants to think a bit more about this, find out a bit more?
For you, it's about thinking of your school in a way where you say, how do I sell my school? How do I sell it to parents? How do I sell it to pupils? How do I sell it to staff? And what is it that the different target markets want from me? Now, different people want different things. The pupils expect totally different things to what parents expect. Parents will talk about safety and they don't want bullying. They want their child to be happy. Safety and bullying might not be a child's first priority. The child might be saying that actually I want friends, but I want great experiences. I want to go to trips and I want to do that. So what do they want that will create a great environment? But what does staff want? Staff aren't going to say necessarily, we just want the families to be happy and the pupils to be happy. They want to be happy and thrive in an environment. But what does thriving and being happy and belonging in an environment look like for them? And once you know your different customers, stakeholders, it's about saying, right, what do each one of them need and want? And the two are different. What do they need is different to what they want. And I literally create a stick diagram for all of our schools and say, for this locality, who are the parents? Right, let's make a stick diagram. What do they look like? What are their demographics? Where do they live? What kind of stuff do they spend their pastimes in? Which football club are they all attending? Where are they going in the evening? Where's their go-to place? Where's their go-to pub, restaurant, cafe? Look, find out where all these parents are. Let's get to know this community and this culture of our typical customer as a parent. Let's get to know our typical teacher in this area. And now let's try and build an experience that is curated carefully around them. As soon as you start doing that, you start creating schools that are real hubs in communities and create a sense of belonging for everyone because you've thought about what it means for them to belong.
It comes back to getting curious and asking.
Absolutely.
Big thank you to Sufian Sadiq, Chief Talent and Transformation Officer at Chiltern Learning Trust, for sharing so much with us and challenging us to think like entrepreneurs, get creative and consider our customers. As I spoke about in our previous episode, it's relationships that matter. If you've enjoyed my conversation with Sufian, please rate or like the episode or leave us a comment. It all helps more people to find us. Thank you and be back with you soon.